Similar grouping eggs or donuts into dozens. Avogadro's number, 6.02 times 10 to the 23 particles, is called a mole.
So that is what a mole is?
That is what a mole is. So where a dozen is 12, a mole is 6.02 times 10 to the 23 of whatever. Because a mole is simply a group, it does not have a unit. It's just a group.
How would they even figure that out?
I don't really understand, and I've researched a couple times where Avogadro came up with this crazy number. And I don't know if it's he rolled over in bed one day, he's 6.02 times 10 to the 23 sounds awesome to me. I'm not sure.
Do we have to memorize that?
It would be a good thing to know. So, we use carbon-12 as our standard reference. And it's, again, one of those things that I have a hard time to kind of visualize. But what I want you to do is think of a teeter-totter in your head.
Am I drawing this?
I don't care.
Okay, which means yes.
So, with carbon-12, if we compared carbon-12 to, let's say, good old basic hydrogen, what do you know about carbon-12 versus hydrogen just from the way I wrote these? So, from the isotope notation, what do you know? It weighs more. What else do you know? It weighs 12 times the amount. What else do you know about carbon-12 specifically? Where does this 12 come from? What is the 12 a measure of? Okay, so there's these things called protons.
These things.
How many protons?
12.
No.
No.
You failed the first unit test in that sentence where you said 12 protons. Congratulations, you all go back to grade 9.
Can I go back to grade 9? I'm so sick.
Graham? Thank you, Graham. 6 protons. And where does the remainder come from?
Neutron.
Right. 6 neutrons. Are we good so far?
Sure.
If we had hydrogen, or hydrogen 1, where does that 1 come from? 1 what? 1 proton. No neutrons. The most common isotope of hydrogen has 1 proton, no neutrons. You can have other isotopes with more, but the most common is that. So if we start to look at the mass ratio, so if we start to compare the mass of carbon to hydrogen, what happens if you had 1 atom of each? So if we had, let's say, carbon to carbon, or carbon to hydrogen, you'd have 12U to 1U if your ratio it was looking at 1 atom. Is that good with everybody so far?
I hate ratios.
You hate ratios? Just think of it as boys to girls, or people with blonde hair to brown hair to orange hair to black hair. That's how I visualize it. Are you in bio right now?
I was last year.
And then you learned about the Punnett square ratios and it really hurt your heads?
I'm more in math class.
Okay.
Which I didn't
So-
like ratios then.
So, if we were looking at 2 atoms, what would our ratio become? 24 to 2. But could you reduce that? To 12:1. So, yes, you could say it's 24 to 2, but it would reduce back down to 12 to 1. And what if you had 3 atoms? Back down to 12 to 1. Good. So then it'd be, what's 12 times 3 is 36, right? 36U to 3U, and then that would reduce back down to 12 to 1, right? All right, are you ready? Use your math skills. How could you figure out the mass ratio of 1 mole of atoms?
Can you help us on this one? Have you got another one?
Wouldn't it be 6.02 times 10 to the 23 to 12 times 6.02 times 10 to the power of 23?
Sure.
What are we?
Can you just agree with me and say, yeah, Mr. Smith?
That's math.
And
But what
if
is
we,
the second number?
we're just using 12 to 1. It's a ratio. No, it's this ratio. 12 protons and neutrons to 1 carbon to hydrogen. So, could you also then reduce this down to 12 to 1? Does that make sense to everybody? So even if you had a mole or a dozen, the ratio would always be, that's a 1, my one kind of 1.
Okay. No, I mean, is it supposed to be here or is it?
It goes with,
Okay.
thus, the mass of hydrogen 1 will always be how much of the mass of carbon 12 atoms? Luke? 1/12. I need to write it below because I'm out of room. Does that make sense to everybody? Hannah, I see you giving it the grumpy face.
Like when you do like the 1 mole of atoms, like you just wrote 12 to 1, but we're like.
Yeah, like
But it would really be,
Skipped the mole thing.
it would really be 6.02
Yeah, I'd like to write
times
that down.
10 to the 23 to 12 times 6.02 times 10 to the 23, which you'll agree reduces to, right?
You still have to keep the units.
You can keep the units in there, yes. Are we good so far? Okay. So, Avogadro's number of particles is the number.
I don't even think you're saying it right.
Avogadro. It is the number of particles What's up?
You need to. What?
The number of particles of C12 in exactly writing is not my forte with this. Exactly, I need practice. Exactly 12 grams of, gotta get the O, there we go, of C12. Sorry if my writing's looking like a 4-year-old.
Huh?
Look, no? Okay. So you might be thinking, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Thus, if you had 1 mole of C12, how many atoms of C12 would you have? How many?
6.2 times 10 to the 23.
Yes. So you would have 6.02 times 10 to the power of 23. Yes, atoms. And what would our mass be? Hang on. Our mass would be 12 grams. Renee.
Why is it 23? Always.
That's the constant. Remember in grade 10 when I taught you about the speed of light?
Yeah.
And I said 3.0 times 10 to the power of 8?
Yeah.
Because it's constant. It just, it is how it is. It's a sucky how it is.
Don't question it.
It's one of those, go home tonight and research Avogadro's number, and it still won't make it much clearer. I've read that article like 6 or 7 times, and I sit there and I'm like, I feel closer, but not so close that I could be like, a beautiful explanation that I could tell grade 11s, and then I'll go, yes. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay.
So the number 23 just works.
No, it's more of a, it's a very, very large amount. Like, why is a dozen a dozen?
Because it is.
To divide.
I'm not sure why they made the pans exactly 12 and that's a dozen, but that's kind of another way of thinking about it.
Mr. Smith was Avogadro crazy.
I don't know. Brilliant. Luke.
So 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd of any atom is
1 mole.
1 mole, which is the equivalent of their atomic weight in grams.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, again, 1 mole of H1 contains how many atoms? Oh, you're good. 6.02 times 10 to the 23 3. My wrist isn't on the tablet, so that's why I'm writing like a 3-year-old.
The different colors.
The colors are so you can tell when I'm not overlapping. Okay. And what would its mass be? Oh, you're good. Okay. So now let's redraw our example. Let's see if you can handle something else. Another teeter-totter. Are you guys ready? So we use carbon 12 again.
Why is it up there?
Oh, what if we put something heavy on our scale now? Something like good old-fashioned silver.
Is that an 8? Yes.
That is an 8 as a scribble snowman.
Oh, 108.
108. All right. So now work on our ratio. Hint, hint. Reduce 108 to 12. So if you took 108 to 12,
Is that 100 to the power of 6?
9 to 1. Nicely done. So our mass ratio would be 9. For every 9 units, you'd have 1 unit. This is our carbon column, and this is our silver column. So far, so good. What would the ratio be for 2 atoms? Or reduced to 9 to 1. And if we get all the way down here to 1 mole of atoms, which is where we kind of got stuck last time, 1 mole of atoms would be 9 times 6.02 times 10 to the 23 to 6.02 times 10 to the 23, or 9 to 1.
So you can do it either? It doesn't matter? Or would you rather?
What do you mean I can do either?
Like, do you want us to be, like, are you going to ask us for some test or advice?
I'm trying to build your understanding, or how it works. So, Renee, when you say either, I teach a class. In that class, I've got 26 students, okay? The 26 students is the weirdest ratio. I've got 24 boys and 2 girls. You could write it that way. That's fine.
Maybe you want to reduce.
But you always want to reduce it down to the base ratio, or the smallest thing. So my real ratio is 12 to 1. So instead of writing 9 times 6.02 to the 10 to the 23 to that, I can reduce it down to 9 to 1.
So those
It's like
cancel
the
each other out,
lowest.
and then you pretend there's a 1 there?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's lowest term.
it is lowest terms.
You divide 108 by 12 to see if it gives you something.
So, if you had 1 mole of Ag108, how many atoms do you have of Ag108? Oh my gosh. Thank you. 6.02 times 10 to the 23.
And then it's the weight.
And what is the mass of our sample?
108.
Grams. How are we doing so far?
We're all right?
So let's summarize.
Wait. What did you say? Yeah. I was writing.
It's 108 grams.
This number is the...
So if I ever had 1 mole of anything, and if you open up the back of your textbook really quick, we'll play a guessing game. You ready? If you had 1 mole of calcium, what mass would 1 mole of calcium be? 40 grams. Here, let's keep playing. If you had 1 mole of palladium, what would 1 mole of palladium... Wait, don't yell it out. Let everybody get there. You're first up to bat, Paran, to guess it. Everybody else quiet. 1 mole of palladium weighs how many grams, Paran?
122.
Is that good? Sophia, you want the next one? If you had 1 mole of ytterbium, atomic number 70. Sophia, your voice sounded a lot like Miles for a second. No throwing pens, please.
Where is it?
It's down here on the little crazy ones. It's down here.
Ytterbium, YB.
Ytterbium.
How much does 1 mole of ytterbium weigh, Sophia?
173.
Grams. Yes. Is that good with everybody?
Yeah.
Please include units at all time in this unit. Okay.
Grams.
So,
Grams for this.
well, for this. So, summary. The mass of one atom
Oh gosh, that's.
of an element. My wrist is floating. Try writing your notes with your wrist not touching the paper. If you're left-handed, you might be able to do this. I feel like I'm a mutant because I can't. I'm like, come on.
An element.
Like you're laughing at me. My wrist is not touching. I've always written with my wrist touching, and I'm struggling. Yeah, I know. Welcome to being left. Yes. I'm doing this for Taylor right now, not for you guys.
I assumed that's what it was for because you were recording.
Yeah, this is recording, so all this insulting is going on YouTube, and then going to Taylor for her to watch you guys insult me.
Oh, wait, is this recording right now?
Yeah, right now. So you're making me look bad. Okay. So, what does the mass of... Hello? What does the mass of one atom of an element equal? Use your brain and think for a second.
Mass.
The mass of one atom, what does it also equal?
Mass of.
Let me give you a hint. Think back to the guessing game we just did.
One atom. Of
Thank
a
you.
mole.
So, the mass of one mole
No, it is.
of the element. We call this the molar. Sorry, I need to erase. I can't spell. The molar and our units for molar mass is grams per mole.
I got my purple patty in a circle.
Molar mass, grams per mole. No E on the end. It's MOL is a unit. I know, Miles.
Mole wasn't a unit.
It is a
But you
unit.
said it wasn't before.
I don't know if I ever said that, but just like dozen is an amount,
Yeah.
mole is an amount, and we can measure it.
Okay.
Okay, so what is the mass of one molecule of CO2? So, you know that how many carbons do you have?
One.
Look at the periodic table. What is the mass of carbon on the periodic table? I hope that you're focusing right now because I really feel like this is becoming unfocused and I really want this to make sense. 12.01. If we're talking about right now, we'll just keep it U. How many atoms in the formula of, so how many atoms of carbon in our formula? 1. 2 oxygen. What is our mass of oxygen from the periodic table? Piran? 0.00. Our class rule for using the periodic table is to use 2 decimal places rounded correctly. And if you add that all up, we are going to get 44.01 U. Because it's one atom of carbon and 2 atoms of oxygen. Is this good with everybody? Okay.
That's the final answer.
So that is for if I ask you about the molecular mass. Is everybody good so far? Luke? Okay. If I ask you the formula mass. So the reason why this is the molecular mass is carbon dioxide forms molecules. Can you say that sodium chloride is a molecule? No. It's a formula unit. because remember that's the lowest ratio of sodium to chlorine. So we can't call that the molecular mass, we can instead call that the formula mass. So do the same thing. What's the mass of one formula unit of NaCl? How many atoms of sodium are there? What is the mass of sodium from the periodic table with 2 decimal places, rounded correctly? Yes, 22.99 U plus how many atoms of chlorine? Times 35.45
Yeah.
equals how are we doing with that? Okay. Now let's make this a little crazy. So when we talk about the molar mass, the molar mass is the exact same except our units change. Our units change whenever you see molar mass to grams per mole. So what is the mass of 1 mole of carbon-12?
Grams per.
Is that good with everybody? So the difference here is we're talking the mass of 1 mole. I like the head nod. I'm okay with that. Yes?
So for molar mass for sodium, would we put 22.99 grams per mole or 2.3 grams?
You could say 2-3.
Okay.
But if you're really wanting to split hairs about it, we could say 22.99 grams per mole. Let's split hairs about it. Take a minute, don't yell it out. Find for yourself the molar mass of water.
Oh, did we add all together?
Use the same process that I used from above right up here. Use the exact same process I used right here. Okay, so I'm going to move back down here. So I hope that you said to yourself, you've got 2 hydrogens. The mass of hydrogen is 1.01 grams per mole.
Oh,
Plus, because you're talking molar mass, it's different. Oxygen, there's 1 atom of oxygen times 16.00 grams per mole equals, I believe it's 18.02 grams per mole. Pardon? Yes. I don't expect, like if you show me that and then get to the end, I'm okay with it. The other thing I'm okay with, do you see how can I talk please? Do you see how I'm writing the number 1 here? Your teachers have probably told you that's kind of useless. If you don't write the number 1, I'm okay with that. I'm just doing it as a force of habit because I want to make sure I clearly show it as the teacher. As the student, if you just wrote 2 times 1.01 grams per mole plus 16.00 grams per mole, I can live a happy life with that. Okay? Do this one. Here's my trick. What does that 2 mean? There's 2 hydrogens, there's 2 carbons, and how many oxygens are there? Right. Go. So I know calcium is 40.08 grams per mole. I know that hydrogen, there's 2 of them. I know it's 1.01 grams per mole. I know that there are 2 carbons, 12.01 grams per mole, plus 6 oxygen, which is 16.00 grams per mole. Someone who's already mathed it up, can you tell me the answer? Renee, go for it.
162.4.
162.12 grams per mole.
I got it. That's all.
Mistakes students make. Number one mistake, not writing units at every single step throughout. Don't have the units magically appear from outer space. Write them in every step. You will lose marks on your quizzes and unit tests if you don't do this. I am done. Your homework is displayed on the board. This unit will work that I will teach you, and then you will have time to homework. Do not waste this time. It's a verb.
Thank you.